अस्सलाम वालेकुम and welcome to In the Arena. कहते हैं असल जीत है मसलों में से अपॉर्चुनिटी को निकालना, यानी मौके ढूंढना मसाइल में से. माई गेस्ट टुडे इज़ अ लिविंग एग्जाम्पल ऑफ दैट. कुछ साल पहले, बल्कि एक डेकेड पहले, आज से कोई तकरीबन 10 साल पहले, एक मिडल ईस्ट में जितने मसले हैं उनकी लिस्ट बनाने से लेकर आज तक का सफ़र. एंड व्हाट अ फैंटास्टिक जर्नी इट हैज़ बिन. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट नन अदर दैन द को फाउंडर एंड CEO ऑफ करीम मुदस्सिर शेखा. आइए आपकी मुलाकात कराते हैं. अस्सलाम वालेकुम मुदस्सिर.
वालेकुम सलाम अस्मा, क्या हाल चाल है आपके?
बिल्कुल ठीक ठाक. सबसे पहले आपको बहुत मुबारक ऑन कंप्लीटिंग अ डेकेड विद करीम.
Thank you.
What a journey it has been, and today we want to talk to you about everything as much as we can. So thank you for the opportunity and the time, and I must tell the viewers that unfortunately हमें ये इस अंदाज में इंटरव्यू कंडक्ट करना पड़ रहा है क्योंकि मुदस्सिर को unfortunately कोविड हो गया है, and हम ये मौके का फ़ायदा ज़रूर उठाना चाहते थे. We didn't want to let go of this opportunity. So very, very kind of you to be able to do this despite everything that you're going through. Well, let's start from where it started from you. So you grew up in Karachi. Tell us what you remember of the city back then.
I grew up in a typical middle-class family in the city, had some of the same challenges that everyone went through, finding buses, being in the middle of crowded buses, being on the top of buses going to school, power outages, water tankers being called, negotiating with the building residents to figure out who's going to pay for it. So some of the same issues that most of us went through on a daily basis a couple of decades ago. But the two things that were probably a little bit different growing up, one was a big focus on education, especially for my mother. People like her are called tiger moms these days. Tha ke achhi school jana hai, achhi grade chahiye, and nothing was good enough. So that was quite instrumental. And second, my dad was part of a family business in Jodia Bazaar. So really saw up close what does it take to survive and thrive as a small business growing up. So alhamdulillah, comfortable childhood with the focus on education and a close window into what does it take to run a business.
Lovely. So how did the US happen then? You then went for your degrees to University of Southern California. How did that happen?
Yeah, look, alhamdulillah, there was a focus on education, as I mentioned. So achhi school jana hai, which was different from the sort of neighborhoods that we grew up in.
Exactly.
Most of the kids were going to certain kinds of schools and we were going to slightly different kinds of schools. So why are we not going to the same schools as everyone else that we're hanging out with on a daily basis?
Yeah.
But the people that I went to school with, they were all after O-levels, A-levels, going abroad. And even though this was not something that anyone in the family had ever done, you should try this as well. This seems to be the rite of passage. But of course, it's not easy to afford going abroad. So the grades were pretty decent. I ended up getting a scholarship, full scholarship to the University of Southern California. That became the gateway to the US. And when I went to the US, I saw a very different way of living in the sense that with sare jo chote masle which bog you down in a place like Karachi and in most emerging markets, you don't even have to think about in a developed place like the US.
ना लाइट जा रही थी, ना टैंकर से पानी भरना पड़ रहा था. आपको अजीब नहीं लगा शुरू के कुछ अरसे में कि मैं कहाँ आ गया हूँ?
Well, it's almost liberating, and when you have that time, and you have that mind space available to you, then you start doing more with that time and more with that mind share, right? So मैं अक्सर लोगों को कहता हूँ कि there is a reason why a lot of big enterprises don't come out of our countries, because we are bogged down with so many basic issues that they completely sap away the potential that people have. Which is why people like myself and many others, when they sort of leave Pakistan, go abroad, they surround themselves with an environment that is a lot more productive, right? And their mind share, their time is able to create much more value than it can create in places like Pakistan and almost all emerging markets. So it's a big contrast and a big insight for me personally.
Like you say, it was liberating in so many ways. You also worked during the .com bubble. आपने बहुत सारे startups के साथ काम किया. I mean, how was that? और उस period में क्या थी major learnings?
I was very unfortunate as it seemed back then, because I graduated in 1999 December. It was almost the height of the .com bubble. So I joined a startup. उसने भी बड़े में जो ना dreams दिखाए थे of becoming rich very quickly. I was 21 years old at that time. What did I know about any of these things? And I ended up working really, really hard. Literally slept in the office with sleeping bags, 20-hour work days. Invested any money that I had saved in college into that startup as well. And basically, the startup went bellies up. And not only did I not get anything out of it, I actually lost everything I had.
Oh,
तो उस वक्त
no.
बहुत बुरा लगा. It was a crushing hit. But every episode in life, such as that one, is a big learning opportunity. And when I step back and think of what did I learn from it, the few things that came out of it were, one, you can be a lot more ambitious than you give yourself credit for. Because एक जो चीज हमने देखी .com bubble में, there were people like me, very young, they looked like me, they were thinking of ideas, they were building businesses, they were getting funding, they were getting big exits. So it seemed like if they can do it, I can do it, right? I'm no different than these people. So it really gave you a lot of confidence that no ambition is too high. The second thing that I learned is the value of speed, that you have to run super, super fast, and you can run faster than you think you can run. And the third was the value of people, right? You surround yourself with amazing people, and then amazing things happen. So while that experience lasted in a spectacular disaster, as I call it, it left us with a lot of good learnings.
You've touched upon speed, and I know you speak about that a lot when it comes to Careem, and I will talk to you about that. But then how did the UAE happen, McKinsey happen, and then you joined it, and then you also had the courage to leave it. So tell us about that.
Well, it was very simple. I had worked at startups for almost 8 years after college without a very clear success. One was a spectacular disaster, others were decent, but nothing amazing. And I asked myself, what am I missing, right? And I felt I studied computer science in college, had an economics degree as well, but I worked in computer science, did programming. And I felt I need to learn business. This is something that I'm learning on the job, but maybe I could benefit from proper business education. So I was thinking of applying to business school, and then suddenly someone mentioned to me that, and we looked at these consulting firms. These firms are business schools that pay you.
That's such a good way of putting it.
Yeah, maybe I should look at them and consider them. And usi waqt, this is 2007, 2008. Parents are getting old. I'm the only son. The desire bhi tha ki yaar Pakistan wapas jana hai. Mom said, don't come to Pakistan yet. And then McKinsey, Dubai came up with an opportunity. I felt I can be close to my family and I can get some business education. This made a ton of sense.
My second question was कि एक तो join करना और फिर इतनी हिम्मत होना कि उसको एक दिन छोड़ देना, considering कि आपका track record startups में कोई बहुत कमाल नहीं था. So how did you find the courage to leave it?
No, look, I think startup track record may not have been great, but you also learn when you work at startups that you cannot give up. You have to keep trying and keep doing it. So initially the plan ही था कि McKinsey 2 years, you learn some business skills, establish yourself in the market, and then go and do a startup once again, go do something entrepreneurial once again. But Alhamdulillah, McKinsey is a great institution. I made a lot of very good friends, learned a lot. वो 2 साल 4 साल बन गए.
वो एक undergrad, आप masters करने गए थे और आप undergrad करके graduate.
Something like that. And then I met Magnus Olsson, who's my partner in crime, co-founder of Careem. He had a surgery in 2011 that almost took his life, brain bleeding, and that had to be treated. And as part of that very difficult experience in life, he had come to a realization that his purpose in life is to build something big, and more importantly, build something meaningful. And after he came back from his surgery, successful, wanted to build something big and meaningful, and I met him. वो कह रहा था यार कुछ करना है, कुछ बड़ा करना है और कुछ ऐसा काम करना है कि that can be our legacy on the planet. And surprisingly, at that time, I was part of a team that was exploring the setup of the McKinsey office in Pakistan. I was part of that team and I was working on a small thing. But as one of the things that I had realized working on that project was that there were not many large companies in Pakistan. And some of the biggest names that we saw growing up, like Habib Bank and Anglo,
Local organizations, yeah.
If you look at how big they are in pure value terms, you'd be surprised, right? Because I spent so many years in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. Want to 100 meters pay, there is $10 billion business, $50 billion business, $100 billion business. This is like a dime a dozen, right? They produce it very easily. But in a place like Pakistan, which has 200 million people, the fifth largest country in the world, we have hardly produced a single decacorn, right? Unicorn bhi ek do hi hongi, agar aap publicly markets mein bhi dekh lein. So when Magnus came and said we should build something big and meaningful, I was like, man, I think we have the potential to build something big and meaningful. But for some reason, people have not dared enough and we've not been able to accomplish it. So I was totally sold on that mission to build something big and meaningful. And we said, let's do it.
So, how much knowledge did you have of transportation, of ride hailing? I mean, back in the time, for somebody who grew up in Pakistan, before Careem, it was an unheard concept. For a girl to even think of sitting in someone's car who's going to take you to another place was just unheard, right? But how much knowledge did you have in the area के transportation challenges क्या हैं और ride hailing क्या है और किस तरह से काम करेगी?
On day one of Careem, instead of saying कि अच्छा हम क्या करेंगे, कैसे करेंगे, we were asking the question, why are we doing it? This is because of Magnus's journey in life. And we said, let's write down why are we doing it. And that line has become Careem's purpose and mission for the last 10 years and inshallah for the next 100 years as well, has been to simplify the lives of people and build an awesome organization that inspires. Because agar aap dekhein, why are big institutions not being built from the region? Magnus, you're from Sweden. You're 9 million people. I don't know what you guys eat for breakfast. You've produced an IKEA, an Ericsson, a Volvo, a Skype, and you name it, right? And hum 220 million log hain, and somehow we've not been able to produce a single large institution of that sort, right? So what's wrong, right? And when you dig down, you realize the same thing that I was mentioning a bit earlier. The life in our part of the world is full of friction. बहुत एनर्जी, बहुत पोटेंशियल ज़ाया हो जाता है छोटी छोटी चीजों को ओवरकम करने में. So if we can simplify the lives of people, we can unleash that potential. So we said, first mission of Careem, simplify the lives of people so that potential can get unleashed. Now, you also need to create confidence and self-belief, because if just unleashing the potential may not be enough. You also need to create some inspiration. If this person in the world can do it, I can do it as well. So we added the second line to our purpose, to build an awesome organization that inspires. Simplify the lives of people and build an awesome organization that inspires. And then we said, okay, now, how do we build a big business that can simplify the lives of people? We said,
and what business do we build?
What business do we build, right? So we said, let's look for ideas. And transportation was something that we were suffering from on a daily basis as consultants, traveling a lot. Transportation was not reliable. We didn't know anything about transportation other than being customers of transport services. So after we identified the problem, we said, let's start learning it. The best way to learn it is to do it. We launched a very, very simple product, went to our friends and family, said, start using it. And then we learned along the way. And one segment that really helped us with that learning were captains. Because a lot of captains, especially in Dubai and Saudi in the early days when we started, are from Pakistan, right? And they really embraced us. They taught us everything that had to be learned about the business, and they handheld our way into the business that we were about to start.
So initial challenges क्या थे? We've heard that story of the 20 captains in किधर कौन सा parking lot? I'm forgetting the name, but 20 captains in a parking lot.
National City in Dubai, yeah.
So what were the earlier challenges?
Yeah, like where do I start, right? I think lots of challenges, a lot of admin challenges, funding challenges, talent challenges. But the two biggest challenges were basically talent and funding. Because 2012 May, startups in the region were not a thing, right? So to attract amazing people to join a startup was very, very difficult, especially when we didn't even have the money to pay them. So that was a huge challenge. Everyone wanted to work at McKinsey and other companies of that sort. No one wanted to work at a startup. So that was one challenge. And second was funding. And starting a business in the region at that time was extremely expensive. हमने तो $50,000 $1,00,000 जमा किए. हमने कहा शुरू करते हैं business. But by the time हमने company register कराई, office का deposit दिया, credit card acceptance का deposit दिया, $80,000 तो वहीं निकल गए. अब रह गए $20,000. How do you build a business at $20,000, right? And then there were a lot of small challenges that are all about building a product, getting the product to the market, learning from it, getting people to believe in you, to remain on the product, even though they may not be getting enough business from the platform in the early days, were all things that came up, and we problem solved our way through those problems.
Right. So एक ride hailing app से एक super app तक. I mean, how did Careem do that?
The plan was never to just do ride hailing. The plan was always to simplify the lives of people, and we gave ourselves a very broad canvas. And of course, the first opportunity that we saw was in ride hailing, because this was a problem that we understood. And as we solved that problem, we found more problems, and we solved those problems, we found more problems. It's very similar to a company like Amazon starting with books in e-commerce, right? Now they do so many other things, but you have to start with a problem that you understand and that you can solve, and then be open to expanding the scope over time with foresight and deliberate attention upfront. So one thing that we realized in 2016-17 was a lot of things that our peers, there are other ride-hailing companies globally as well, a lot of things that our peers were taking for granted, we had to build ourselves in this region. We almost had to be more vertically integrated than others. So, for example, if you America में ride-hailing company start करते हैं, you don't have to rebuild maps because maps are pretty reliable. अगर आप दुबई में या कराची में या लाहौर में Google Maps को खोलें, वो आपको exact address तो नहीं बताता ना, वो तो street का address बता देगा best. अब शायद बेहतर हो गया होगा, 10 साल पहले तो बहुत मुश्किल थी. So we had to build our own locations database so that the service could work reliably, the captain could show up at your door. We had to build our own payment infrastructure because not everyone in the region has credit cards and debit cards that those companies in the West could rely on. अब वो cash ले रहे हैं सारे captains, उनसे फिर cash लेना है, settle करना है, losses को manage करना है, all of. So we had to build so many things that companies in the rest of the world can take for granted because those services have been built and the infrastructure is at higher layer of abstraction that you can build on. तो हमने कहा यार इतने सारे हमने चीजें बना ली हैं, इसके ऊपर हम ride hailing service चला रहे हैं, but can we not do other things on top of this? Yeah. Absolutely. Many delivery services need the same issues. Many other things that customers need have the same underlying building blocks requirement. So फिर हमने कहा let's see what more we can do. And one thing led to another. The super app concept was also being done in some other parts of the world, which inspired us. So हमने कहा सही है, this is perfectly aligned with our purpose to simplify lives. We can simplify the lives of people in not just things that we do organically at Careem, but the super app is an open platform. Anyone that wants to target our customers can build their application on the Careem super app. They can target our customers, and they can also use all the underlying building blocks that we have built, our maps, our payment infrastructure, our everything else. Everything has been built. You can use it to make your service more reliable, and you can target customers through the Careem app.
One thing that I want to ask you, जब शुरू कर रहे होते हैं आप 10 साल पहले, मे बी आप में बहुत ज़्यादा ज़ील थी, स्पिरिट थी, वो पर्पस था, और फिर शायद एक कामयाबी भी चाहिए होती है. But when you get all of that, you get the success, you get the fame, you also get a lot of acknowledgement of the good work that you've done. What keeps you so motivated to be following the kind of schedule that you follow today?
Look at what's happening in our countries, right? It's not just a Pakistan thing, it's happening in some other parts of the region as well. The political systems, the economic systems, they're not set up to take us forward. So I actually feel that companies like Careem and a lot of the startups and organizations that are out there, we almost have a sense of responsibility to push hard and make sure that we can become the vehicle through which lives of people at scale can be radically uplifted. I often tell people, imagine what the region would look like if an Amazon or a Google came out of this country. Let's say what happened if Google was based in Pakistan. Google came out of Pakistan. It's a multi-trillion-dollar business. I'm sure the country would be different radically. Everyone in the country would be radically different because that one business that created such large global impact came out of the country, right? So if we can build the next Googles and Amazons of the world from this part of the world, we will overcome a lot of the things that are holding us back and become the source of uplift for the people of our region that we truly, truly care about. And we can, of course, take a chap, chale ab aaram karte hain, bahut mehnat kar li, which would be a fine thing to do. But these things have been given to you, and you see what you can do with it. I feel we have a responsibility to keep going, and this is not the time to stop. This is the time to say, how can I accelerate my journey based on more resources and other things that have come my way versus slow down? Because the region definitely needs it. Pakistan definitely needs it.
Does this immense sense of responsibility ever exhaust you?
Yes, of course it does. It'd be wrong to say it doesn't. You get exhausted physically, if nothing else, right? By working hard. And then you find ways to recharge yourself from time to time. जब थक जाते हैं, कहते हैं थोड़ा rest करना है, but we cannot give up because we have a huge sense of responsibility. There are 500 million people in the region that can benefit from Careem in some shape or form. We're only simplifying the lives of a few million every month. There's like 100x more impact to deliver. And even the people that are benefiting are only benefiting in this way. They should be benefiting in this much way, right? So we're so early and we see so much room to fill the gap that we feel we don't have an option but to keep going. And frankly, it's not just on our shoulder, right? Now the ecosystem is thriving and it's coming up as well. And all of us collectively have to bridge this gap and inshallah lift the quality of life of our people to a level that even exceeds what we saw when we traveled to other parts of the world, inshallah.
Any advice to young founders? You've talked about speed, I know. So building on that, do you think there should be more action-driven, or is there anything else you'd like to suggest to the new founders?
Yeah, look, I think the first advice generally is shoot for the moon. You have a lot more potential than you may give yourself credit for. So make sure that your ambition level is super, super high so that you don't shortchange your potential. So the first advice is shoot for the moon in everything that you do. The second advice is do it for the right reason. When you're doing anything for the wrong reasons, then all of a sudden bad things happen and people desert you and things don't happen the way that you want them to happen. So make sure you have the right intention and are sort of more purposeful in your orientation than purely materialistic, and always do the right thing. And then third, have a long-term perspective. And especially these days, the startup environment is going through a bit of a shake-up at the moment. And we were all coming from a time where, yes, speed is important, but there was a lot of practices. Jaldi growth dikhani hai, valuation badhani hai, paise raise karne. Take a long-term view on this thing. This is a long-term journey. This is not a sprint. Be prepared to run a marathon. So just take a long-term view and do the things that are the right things for the long term.
Awesome. So be of service, shoot for the moon, and take the long term into perspective. Thank you so much, Mudassir. This was absolute pleasure. Can't wait to see how the Careem story unfolds even more in front of us. And we wish you and everybody at Careem lots of health and happiness. Thank you very much for your time.
Bahut shukriya, Asma. It was a pleasure to speak to you.
Do let us know what you thought about the show. Your feedback is very warmly welcomed. Apna khayal rakhiyega. Khuda Hafiz.